What was it like growing up here in this community?
Other than my 4 years in West Lafayette at Purdue, this is where I've lived my entire life. I remember hanging out in the parks in the summer. That's what we did. We hung out in the parks. The park programs were big. I would leave the house in the summer at 9 in the morning and I'd come home for dinner and then head back out at night. And neighborhoods were much more active. When I got into high school, finally, and I got a car, we cruised a lot. Can't imagine doing that today, couldn't afford the gas. Back then I could get gas for like 35 cents a gallon.
What was your first car?
1966 Mustang, midnight blue. Boy, I wish I had that car today. Be worth a lot of money. It was a cool car. Probably my best recollection of the 70s was this building was really crowded. Actually, our enrollment when I went to school in the early 70s was 1,800, and we didn't have the West Wing, we didn't have the pool, we didn't have the commons. The stadiums were packed. Basketball game, believe it or not, the cave would be packed in the 70s. That was just what we did. We'd hang out at school events more so than probably a lot of students do today. Football was kind of my life growing up. I remember my first football was in elementary school. We played flag. And I went to Maine Junior High School, which then became a furniture store, and now is like an old person's home. Actually, football was what drove me into teaching and coaching. That's what I wanted to do. I had some great mentors. Bill Doba was my football coach at Mishawaka High School, and Bill Doba was a great mentor for me. And like I said, it kind of drove me to where I ultimately ended up doing here. It was because of men like him, Don Cromer, just to name a couple. We went 9-1 my senior year. The state football playoffs were a lot different then. Only one team from each region got into the playoffs, and we went 9-1 that year. South Bend, Washington beat us pretty bad. That was a great game. If you go back and look at newspapers of that game, they estimate there were as many as 12,000 people at Steel Stadium that night. I remember they were lined up from the track back to the school into the fences. It was crazy, and we got beat up pretty good. The following year, the year after I graduated, the Cavemen went to the state finals. I think they lost to Indianapolis Cathedral, but that 9-1 year, our coaches believed that we would maybe win 4 or 5 games that year. And talking with Coach Doba, actually I talked to him last year, and he talked about that. He says, we had no expectations for that year. We thought you might go win 4 or 5 games. He says, the fact that we won 9 games, we went 9-1, and we beat some really good teams that year. He said that may have been one of the highlights of his coaching career, what we accomplished that year. I wish I could go back to college. I've dreamed about getting in a time machine. I'd love to go back to my time in college. I can't compare it to anything because I haven't been on a college campus in a long time, but I have such great memories of college. I walked on at Purdue my freshman year. I was a preferred walk-on at that time. I went back my sophomore year, and my body was just falling apart. At that level, there's not much room for a 6-foot, 180-pound kid that doesn't run very fast. And when I got my nose splattered all over my face, I decided that I'll play intramural basketball, not football. But that was the only school I applied to, actually. And I was blessed enough to get in, and love Purdue, and excited about Purdue today as I was back then, maybe even more so.
What was your best memory of being in Mishawaka?
I thought about this, and I don't know for a Mishawaka kid how it could get any better than the life I've lived. I went to school here, I played football here, I coached football, varsity football here in the early 90s. I was a quarterback of the 1973 9-1 Cavemen. I coached girls golf here, I played golf here, and I'm teaching here. And I get to retire here. There aren't too many people that probably have been as blessed as I am that live their dream the way I have, where you actually get to come back to the place where you spent 4 years of real important years of your life in high school. And 43 years later, here I am, and I can say that I kind of done it all. in regards to Mishawaka High School. My first teaching gig was at Northwood High School, which is in Napanee. I spent 6 years at Northwood High School, and then I moved down to one of the junior high schools there, Wakarusa Middle School, for 3 years. I coached football at Wakarusa for 9 years. I coached boys golf, I coached wrestling. I love Northwood. I probably would have never left Northwood hadn't been for a good friend of mine, Max Eby, who was associate principal here in 1987. He called me and he says, "Hey, we have an opening here, and you have an unusual license. You got to do a license. Would you be willing to come home?" And I says, "I'll be there." So it was an easy decision for me, but I made a lot of great friends at Northwood, and still a little bit of me, you know, is still with Northwood, but I'm a caveman at heart. When I came back to Mishawaka, my goal was I wanted to be the head football coach at Mishawaka High School. That's why I came back. And they didn't have any room on the staff at that time. And then my third year here, I was at John Young for 2 years. I coached the 8th grade football there. And then they had a staff opening here, and I came in and I coached running backs and quarterbacks and had the title of offensive coordinator, I think, for 2 or 3 years. I got hooked up with girls basketball, and I had no intention of coaching girls basketball, and they had hired a new coach in 1987, and he twisted my arm every way possible, and finally I told him I would do it as a 1-year thing just to help him out. And when I lost the football position, the head basketball job opened that same year, and I got the job, and 16 years later, I stepped down in 2003, and as much as I loved football, the basketball situation still weighs real heavily on me because I had so many great young ladies that I had the honor to coach, and still in touch with a lot of them today and how successful they were. And I think, we won 3 consecutive sectionals in the mid-90s, 94, 95, 96. We won a conference. I was fortunate enough that I received 4 Coach of the Year awards in that same time period. The coaching part of it played very heavily into my life until about 18 years ago. And then I went a whole different route when I got out of coaching, and I got involved in student government, being in charge of the social studies department. So I went more into the academic stuff. So I've had a real balanced experience in my years here. When I was a freshman here, we had to take a civics class. It was required. And Mr. Taylor, John Taylor, was my civics teacher in 1970, and he assigned a project. It was a career education project. And what we had to do is we had to pick 3 careers that we would like to go into, rank them 1, 2, and 3, and then we had to research and so on and so forth. So my 3 career choices when I was 14 years old, number 3, I wanted to be an astronaut. Neil Armstrong had just walked on the moon, so everybody wanted to be an astronaut. My second choice is I wanted to be a professional football player. All guys want to do that stuff. Well, I didn't become an astronaut. That didn't work out. The pro football thing definitely didn't work out. And this is the honest truth. My number 1 choice when I was 14 years old is I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. Here I am. I mean, I think of that story a lot and how it all evolved, and it just seems such an easy, smooth transition for me. And how many people when they're 14 years old decide what they want to do and actually do it and stay in it as long as I have. I mean, it's kind of surreal, when I think about it. I want to be remembered as a hard worker. I want to be remembered as someone that's loyal, loves Mishawaka High School. I was trying to do some math in my head over the 43 years. I think I've had somewhere around 8,000 students. And it's funny because no matter where my wife and I go in the city, where I'm always running into someone, "Hey, are you Mr. Breske?" "Yeah," and I go, "Hey, my mom had you as a student way back when." Now I'm getting into, "Hey, my grandmother had you in class." And I go, "Oh, wow." This has never been a job for me, and I say that in all sincerity. I always viewed every morning when I came in this building, it was an honor to do what I did. How many people get to do what I did for 43 years? Such an honor to come into this building, and there aren't many schools that have the history that Mishawaka High School has. We're pushing our 100th year, and you think about all of the great people that have gone through this building, the teachers, the students, the administrators, And just to say that, you were a part of that for so many years. If I went back and redrew my life and how my life worked out, I wouldn't change a thing. I think what's going to happen here is probably that first week back in August, it's all going to hit me, because this is all I've ever known my whole life. The camaraderie, I've got a lot of great friends in the building, made a lot of great friends over the years. The interaction with students, I think interacting with students keeps you young, makes you think young. Obviously, not every day is a great day, but there's certainly a ton more great days than not great days. At the end of the day, I always try to think of something that makes me smile and make me laugh as I'm walking out the door. And some people, if they ever watch me walking out of the building at night, they'd think I was losing my mind because I'm laughing about something that happened during the day or whatever, because I want to walk out at the end of every day on a high note. I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. I would love to go back in my time machine and relive my high school years because it's such an innocent time. I tell students this all the time, enjoy this time of your life. Those of you who go to college, enjoy that time of your life. This school is so unique. There's high schools all over the place, but this place has just got a really uniqueness to it that makes it special. And I think a lot of it is the history and how many students we have here that had family members that went through here. How many teachers here, Mr. Rendell, we're alumnus here, and I think that's really important in a school environment that we have former students in the building teaching. So I wish everybody the best of luck, my colleagues, the students here. Just appreciate the moment, appreciate the time, and hopefully 10, 15, 20 years from now, you still have fond memories of Mishawaka High School and you want to come back and tour the building. And when I walk out of here, there'll be a part of me that still stays here.